Welcome to the second episode of Journeys. Adventure and discovery in the time, as I like to say, love and life in the time of Corona. So excited to have Journeys and Elle with me, and we've got some great stories, great things. A bit of business first that I just want to talk about first is I want to apologize for the fact that some of you got two emails, and that led to confusion about which time we were starting today. And even in that original email that said we were at 2, some people were in that room, and hopefully everybody got the message to come over here. It looks like people are coming in, so I'm happy. Thank you all for attending again. I know these are trying times. My whole idea when starting this webcast was frankly to connect with people all over the world, not here in my backyard, even though I can't really go out of my backyard. I really wanted to go far. So that's why with Ronnie last week, if you guys saw that, it was a great episode, a lot of good feedback. I appreciate that. And with Jeremy and Elle, they're in Uruguay, as you know, lockdown. And I continue to reach out to people all over the world to bring this global international awareness to see what's happening in this the global pandemic, but more or less just to connect with people using the technology as well. So without much ado, as I did last time, I do want to do a shout out to our first responders, our healthcare workers, the people working in the grocery stores. So many people risking their health and their lives to help us as we are in lockdown. And for all those small businesses that, it's questionable what's the future for them. Our government's trying very hard, I think, anyway, to get, aid to them. But if you can do your part, your salons, your restaurants, your boutiques, you go to buy a gift card. Because, once this all settles, once the droplets all settle, so to speak, we'll all be able to go back and use those gift cards and help them. But they can all use the money and the support right now.
Totally.
Hey guys,
how's it going?
Hey,
it's going fantastic. I am so excited to see you guys here. I gotta get back.
We're happy to be here. This is the most human connection we've had since we landed in Uruguay. It's great.
Right. So I'm gonna share what I know and then have you fill in a little bit. But the first thing I want to do is Jeremy, and it's called Kroeker, even though it looks like Kroeker. And I mean, for years, I always thought it was Kroeker. And then I saw him on a recent episode of the Motorcyclist motel guy with Drew Beatty, and it's Kroeker, right? So how did that spelling happen? Anyway, I just while I queue up.
I'm glad you asked. Alan. It harkens back to the day when the Mennonites had to flee the old country. It is true. When we were coming to, as the Mennonites were coming to North America, Canada, we had an umlaut, an O with 2 little dots on it. And it makes a certain sound that was not reproducible in the English language, I guess. And the best approximation that they were able to come up with was an OE. But it's not even pronounced Kroeker. I can't do a proper pronunciation of my own name, but Kroeker is as close as I can get. Okay. And basically, that's the whole reason I started a YouTube channel, was just to correct people and their perception of how to pronounce my last name.
So, Jeremy and Elle here are from Canada, and Canmore, I know, is where you're from, Jeremy, and I think you're closer to Calgary. You guys don't live together,
I'm
right?
from Calgary, correct.
Well, we live together now, but
exactly.
we did not live together before COVID-19.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that here. I'm going to put up a little quick screen share. I want to show for those people who may not know where Canmore and Calgary are, but you can see it's north of the United States border, of course, in our friendly neighbors in Calgary. So you're just west of Calgary in Canmore. How long of a motorcycle ride is that, Jeremy?
1 hour.
Yeah, it's about an hour.
Okay, so
I like to say that Canmore is kind of like the Aspen, Colorado of Canada, and Calgary is the Houston, Texas, but with snow.
I like that. Well, with that, I'll take it off of screen sharing for a second. So that's where, what these guys did, and I say guys because, you know, Elle is far from a guy, beautiful Elle, but they left this great white north, as we like to say, and they traveled way south and to the very bottom of South America to a place called Ushuaia.
Yep.
And on motorcycles.
That's
so, but before this ever happened, I'm gonna pull up a little. You would think that I would be able to do this. There we go. I think it's right there. Here we go. Start that. Bam. So Jeremy is the author of Motorcycle Therapy, and this is the book cover, and he is also the editor of a compilation series called Motorcycle Messengers, and in fact, this is the second edition, and these are a collection of travel writing by motorcycle adventurers, and I actually contributed to number 2, but both of these books are real good. But to kind of I wanted to show the route now. I didn't see a map where we saw how you got from Canmore, Calgary to San Diego, but I love the fact that you've got a map here starting in San Diego. Of course, I was in Romania or something at the time you came through and stayed with Carla.
Right. Yeah.
But you two were on motorcycles. You got all the way down to the bottom of Central America to Panama, where you got on a boat. Let's just kind of really quick run through that. Then why don't you describe this route, and I'll click the maps because I've got about 4 of them here that you made.
Yeah, sure. Well, we basically made a beeline through the United States with the stop off in Dana Point to visit our mutual friend, Carla King. And then we zigzagged inland and did a pretty quick job of Central America, I would say. And then we boarded the Stahlrat, which is kind of a famous boat that takes motorcyclists from Panama to Colombia and from Colombia to Panama and other places as well. And then we landed in Colombia.
Yes, we landed in Cartagena. Stayed for a couple days and then moved up to northern Colombia to Santa Marta. Did some scuba diving there. This is when we first started slowing down. Instead of rushing to make that deadline of the boat, we were able to, for the first time, be in a new country, for the first time, be on roads that we'd never been on before, and start doing a little bit more relaxed sightseeing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, though. It looks like these maps are taken from CanadaMotoGuide.com, maybe?
I believe so. It was the series of... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I was writing about this the whole way down and posting on Canada Guide. And thank goodness they made the maps for us, because I wouldn't have even done this myself. So shout out to them.
It is impressive. Now, for those people that are just joining us now, I'm talking with Jeremy Kroeker and his girlfriend, Elle West, who are from Canada outside Calgary and have ridden their motorcycles all the way down to the bottom of South America and to Tierra del Fuego. And now they're stuck in Uruguay. And we're just talking about their route. And isn't it also very funny that we always move fast at the beginning of our journeys, and it takes some time till you start to slow down?
Yeah, I was always keen to move fairly quickly through the Central American portion of our journey because of, we had a deadline to meet the Stahlrat, but also Elle and I had both been through that countryside before. And my big thing, and Elle's was too, was to really get to South America where we could slow down and explore and have what we considered a proper adventure. I feel like it really began when we boarded the Stahlrat. Like that for me was almost the beginning of the trip. And it's where I first breathed a huge sigh of relief.
Jeremy was talking about shipping our bikes and skipping Central America to begin with and just starting in South America. And I had to fight a little bit to get the ride down there included.
To get the right, well, explain to people who may not know on the webcast here why you can't just simply go from Panama. We're connected to South America. Why couldn't you just ride through there?
On the map, it looks great. It looks easy.
Yeah, it looks like there's land, and I mean there is land, but from what I understand, it's pretty swampy. So that last 150 kilometers at the tail end of Panama before Colombia. It's called the Darien Gap. The province in Panama is called the Darien, and there's a gap in the highway. So the Pan American Highway does not go all the way through. There are a few people in the world who have been through and live to tell about it, but it's basically swamp. You couldn't ride. There's no road. You'd be pushing and shoving and bushwhacking and canoeing in order to get through that if you wanted to even try it.
Yeah. Recently, there were a few ex-military guys who took their motorcycles through, and I think they started with a few bikes. Anyway, they ended up with one bike that they got through, and one of them has been at least one of those bikes has been abandoned in the jungle, and the clutches are burnt out and things like that. You can do it, but it has to really be something that you're determined to do. And up until recently, there was still a civil war going on in Colombia. So that has thankfully ended now. But 10 years ago, 15 years ago, not only was the terrain inhospitable and there was no roads, but also the risk of kidnapping or just being shot was actually quite a real possibility. Now that's not so much of a problem, but still the jungle is a pretty harsh environment for motorcycles.
Sure. So you went through Colombia and then obviously through Ecuador here. And we're going to look at speaking of Colombian roads, I think there was a pretty gnarly one. At least I think Elle will admit.
Oh, yeah.
The Trampoline of Death.
Yeah. The Trampoline of Death. That was a fantastic road just before entering Ecuador, right? It was just on the southern part of Colombia.
Yeah.
Yep. And you went all the way down through Peru. And I'm going to just continue through these slides. You got down. We'll talk about this very famous road. I'm going to put the whiteboard back on. It's probably right around here.
Ruta 40. Yeah.
Right. And it's pretty calm there.
Some people have warned us about the wind in Patagonia, but it's still hard to comprehend until you actually experience it.
Oh my, I can imagine. Yes, I did that myself. Okay, so let's see. Is that then you actually? So you went to Punta Arenas. This very bottom here is actually it's not necessarily the southernmost part of Chile, but what happened in Punta Arenas? You stopped there for a bit.
That's right, and we were waiting to get Elle's bike serviced. And are you referring to the?
Tear gas.
Okay, go ahead. Why don't you tell that story?
Well, I think all the way along South America, we were worried about civil unrest. We'd heard stuff happening in Ecuador and the whole country was closed down. But then by the time we got there, it cleared up. Whew, sigh of relief. And then we heard about some troubles in Bolivia. And in fact, the Women Riders World Relay couldn't go through Bolivia. They had to pause, put their whole agenda on hold and come back.
Wow. I think we just froze for a second. See if we can.
So when we did go to Chile, in Punta Arenas is where we found that there was still a lot of protests happening. And we talked to somebody who said, yeah, they seem to get riled up again on Fridays. And I think there was a particular event. There was in the capital in Santiago in Chile, somebody had actually been killed during a protest. So all the protesters throughout the country were, freshly renewed with vigor and took to the streets again. So we saw some activity. I mean, everything was boarded up, glass on every restaurant, on every bank, on every storefront down the street. It's just boarded up with plywood. It looks like the whole town is a ghost town, but these businesses are still open. They just look boarded up and spray painted with graffiti. So we got used to that. We went to a restaurant, saw some people banging drums and waving flags. Thought, okay, looks like a pretty peaceful protest, no big deal. And then as we left the restaurant, we both started sneezing. And Jeremy went, that smell is kind of familiar. What is that? And then we saw a whole bunch of people on the front step of the restaurant with their cell phones out, taking video of something down the street. And then clouds of smoke rolled in and people are running down the street, just crowds of people. We're like, what's going on? That protest that looked peaceful earlier had turned not so peaceful. There was some stuff on the road that was on fire. There were police coming to disperse the crowds. There was a water tank driving down the street, spraying, putting out the fires, but also spraying at people and getting them to disperse.
Yeah, it was not a fire suppressant vehicle. It was definitely a water cannon. It was a crowd control vehicle, so aiming at people's knees and things like this.
And tear gas.
Yeah, and I've seen some fairly robust protests before in my day, and I've seen some tear gas canisters bouncing around. This was Elle's first. and she just kind of toddled into the fray to practice her Spanish.
There was a couple of young ladies who were very friendly. They saw me coughing with the tear gas. They offered me some water, so I started chatting with them and practicing my Spanish, which is not great, but enough to ask a few questions and tell me more about why you're protesting and what do you think the solution is and what do you hope for. And she was talkative and friendly, and it was great. I was enjoying the conversation.
Yeah.
Jeremy had to grab my shirt and pull me down the street and say, "We get out of here now."
Yeah, I wasn't really concerned with our safety. It seemed like we were at a safe distance and everything, but I was kind of just ready to go back to the hostel and go to bed because we had a big day the next day.
Right. And what was wrong with the bike, or was it just regular maintenance?
Regular maintenance. I have a BMW, so I only need an oil change about half as often as Jeremy's KLR does. So we aren't on the same service schedules, and it was just time for mine here. I got some new tires as well, I think.
Yep.
Well, this, I have to say, I've been reading going back and reading a lot of Jeremy's stuff, and I've never heard KLR. Now it's a Kawasaki motorcycle, 650cc, single cylinder technology. Good, dates back to the 50s, I think. No, but
yeah,
anyway,
something like that. The Second World War. Yeah.
Yeah, it's carbureted, and they're in these, I think, but he says this bike has got I think you said the aerodynamics of a Holstein cow. I mean, if that's not a word picture for you.
Yeah, it's a big, heavy, lumbering machine. I call it the little tractor. I don't usually name my bikes. I named one of I've had 4 KLR 650s, and one of them I named the Oscillator because it kept on wobbling and wobbling and wobbling. But that turns out it was a problem with the steering head bearings. And this one I kind of sometimes call the little tractor because it's just a machine. Doesn't do anything very well, but it'll keep on turning the wheels usually. Yeah.
Hey, I've just put up a poll. I actually meant to put a different one up there, but people are starting to answer. So on the right-hand column, as we're talking about protests in Chile and taking boats from Panama to Colombia, once this goes, I'm curious about the people in our audience who, hey. Cat just stole a little piece of cheese. Did you guys see that live?
I heard you. I didn't see the cat.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, Dice, I got you.
Can we vote?
Got your number. So where would you go once this whole lockdown comes finished? So put a poll up there while we talk a little bit more. I want to rewind back in time, Jeremy, to this trip. Your motorcycle therapy book is a travelogue journal of your kind of coming to grips with heartache, broken heart, and just life, like call it a broken heart. And you rode with a buddy down through Central America.
That's right.
You always wanted to go to South America, to Ushuaia, to the very bottom of there. And you've made many attempts after that.
Yeah. Well, I wrote about it again for Canada Moto Guide, and I think I said that this is my 4th attempt to get to Ushuaia and back. And that's maybe playing with the facts a little bit. The first trip that I undertook back in 2003, it was open-ended. And yes, we were kind of aiming for South America, but we weren't very optimistic that we would get there. So we got as far as we could at that time with our money, and our partnership began to dissolve because of primarily my shortcomings and my failings, but we weren't getting along by the time we got to Panama, so we turned around and went home. That's attempt number 1. Attempt number 2, I actually rode my motorcycle all through Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. So if you're into geography, you'll quickly realize that wasn't a very strategic attempt.
That was before the days of GPS, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, I did end up using some pretty rudimentary maps for that trip. But so was that really an attempt to get to South America? No. I bought a motorcycle. My plan was to go to South America. My plan was to go to Ushuaia and write a book about it. And then my friend wisely said, that's the same book. You can't go to South America. You wrote motorcycle therapy, do something else. So I kind of redirected my efforts, and I found myself in the Middle East and with no real plan. And then the third attempt, and I wrote a book about that trip as well called Through Dust and Darkness. Then my third attempt was pretty half-baked. Again, another breakup, another relationship failed. Just let me take this out of your ear for a second. Anyway, another relationship went sideways, and I decided to go south again, this time with a 1982 Honda CB 750 Custom, like the worst motorcycle you could take on an adventure like this. And then I quickly realized that I didn't have enough money, and no, I didn't have the right motorcycle. And then I kind of fell into kind of a steady job. Unfortunately, I became employed. So that was attempt number 3. Yeah. So yes, this is my 4th attempt, but the 2 middle attempts were pretty ill-conceived, you could say.
You can see. So it's as most people know, I travel alone, right? And though I mean, there's times I meet people like my last week's guest, Ronnie. I rode with him for about 3 weeks in sub-Saharan Africa. But now going with a partner, and there are a lot of others, mutual acquaintances we have of people who've done it both alone and with a partner. It can be challenging, particularly because you guys live an hour away from each other in Canada. You haven't really done long-term travel. Now you left in August. So what are we, about 7 months into this journey? And now you're stuck in a tiny apartment in Colonia, Uruguay.
Yeah. Traveling together was one thing. That being stuck in a 1-bedroom apartment is another level.
How are you guys holding up?
Not too bad. There's been a couple of points along the way. Some people have been following us on the podcast Adventure Rider Radio, and we talked in one of those episodes about a day where we actually left each other and ate at separate restaurants across the street from each other just because we couldn't stand the sight of each other for that couple of hours.
Yeah, there again, it was a lot of metaphorical foot stomping and, victim, whatever. I say that I crawl beneath a blanket of victimhood.
We were both quite grumpy. We were both upset with each other. We were both saying words that couldn't be taken back. And he said, "I'm eating right here." And I said, "Okay, fine." And I just kept driving and took a meal and some time apart. And then we went, okay, well, can we do this now civilly? I think we can. All right.
And like you, Alan, I've mostly done traveling by myself as well. So I did that one big trip that turned into the book Motorcycle Therapy. I did that with a friend and it didn't go very well. And that was down to me. So my next trip was solo and I enjoyed it a lot more. And then I kind of wondered how this would work out going with Elle, because not because she's not a great person, but because I do like solo traveling. As it turns out, thankfully, I chose wisely, and Elle is very patient and kind. And so it has been working out. But yeah, it is tense sometimes. And there are compromises that you have to make. And fortunately, Elle is a pretty good communicator. So far it's worked out.
I think because Jeremy and I had both traveled before with others and on our motorcycles, we knew what to expect roughly. My biggest worry was that he would write another book about this. And I asked for editing privileges before we started the trip, and he said no.
No editing privileges. I mean, you in my little tease for this webcast, what you had written, Jeremy, was to the effect of that you guys were on traveling together, but you were, for the most part, on independent journeys. And if things did go south, as we like to say, you were both prepared to go your separate ways. I mean, how did that conversation come up? And
it was a long, continuous, ongoing conversation.
I would say we're still having that conversation. So we took separate cooking setups and separate tents and separate everything in case we did want to separate. Maybe for a week, maybe for a month, or maybe I had to go home before Elle did. So part of it was really pragmatic and really practical. I have a deadline. I've got to be back in Canada in October for work, and Elle does not have that deadline. So part of it was simply, I'm going to go home before you. And part of it was because we weren't sure if it was going to be if we were going to be really compatible on a long-term, ongoing, day-to-day basis. And we have actually used separate tents on occasion, usually just because we wanted some extra space and to air out the tents. But there was one or 2 nights probably where we were
I
a
can
little.
think of one.
Yeah, we were a
I'm
little bit.
setting up my own tent tonight.
Mhm.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many days camping versus staying in guest houses?
Camping is the minority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially through Central America and countries like Peru and Bolivia, you can find places to stay pretty cheap.
Mhm.
So why not have a little more comfortable space?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I always say with you always have a bit of dew and mist on the tents, and it's just you have to pack them up wet, then they start smelling, and I always
I do have a little bit of adventurer envy sometimes. Like when I think about people like Ed March, for example, he's the first name that pops to the top of my mind. But people like him that do everything on such a small budget, they're forced to camp, but they also enjoy camping. And I think it becomes a bit of a bigger adventure. And sometimes I feel like I'm not up to that level of adventuring if we go into hotels.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Ed March camped in Canada in the winter. I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that.
It's at a certain point you can say, you know what? No, thank you. It isn't an adventure. Sometimes, especially in Central and South America, where the adventure might be just negotiating the rate for the room. And
exactly. Your brain's already thinking in a different language and trying to navigate places you've never been before. I've got enough going on. It's finding a place where someone else can say, hey, let me help you. I can tell you where the local restaurant is or the closest grocery store, or give you some advice about the road ahead for tomorrow. That's helpful.
And the times that we did set up our tent were proper adventures, I would say. Like there was one time in Peru where we had a flat tire on a remote gravel road, and the sun was setting, and earlier that day we had mechanical problems as well. And so we found ourselves in the middle of nowhere.
On the side of a dirt road.
Yeah, we were just hustling, trying to find a town where we could set up. And we couldn't find one. The sun was going down. And we finally found this little community in the middle of nowhere. And we went to the police station and said, we've got nothing. We've got no plan B. Can we set up here? And they said, yep. And so we slept behind a police station in the dirt with a bunch of feral cats.
And cat poop.
Yeah, and cat poop. And yeah. And, if we didn't have our tents that night, that would have been pretty rough.
Yeah.
I set up my hammock and we made the best of it. And then the last time we set up our tent was after a brutal windstorm on the Route to 40.
That road was awful.
Well, and the gravel was super thick and all this round river rock, and we were getting blown off into the ditch. Literally, our bikes were getting blown over, and finally, Elle said, that's it, I'm done. And it was the middle of the day, and the winds were brutal, and it must have been a comedy show watching us set up the tent.
Yeah, it almost got destroyed.
Yeah, the tent was like a parachute in this wind, but we got it set up. And
we used the motorcycles kickstands to hold the tent corners down.
Yeah. So the times that we did set up the tent were pretty full on, some of them anyway.
That's enough adventure for me.
Hey, if you're just joining us, I'm talking with Jeremy Kroeker and Elle West, 2 adventure motorcyclists, an author. Jeremy's got several books out. They're from Canada. In August 2019, they got on their motorcycles and rode all the way south to the very tip of South America. And on their way back home to Canada, near Calgary, after spending some nice time in Buenos Aires, one of my favorite cities in the world, they took the ferry across to Colonia, Uruguay, and then the borders were shut down. So they are stuck in a small apartment in Colonia, and we're talking to them now. While we've been talking travel, I'm going to go to the next poll here, but I want to say, for those of you who didn't see it, but most people online right here, we have, seems Africa's most curiosity, followed up by South America. And Mexico and Central America, not even a notch, and everything else is pretty much set. But I have another question, because we've got quite a few people joining us today. Is how many of you guys ride motorcycles? So another poll is going to appear there while I queue up a video that takes us back to just before these 2 crazy kids got on their bikes. And this is this video I call Big Head.
Oh no.
Behind me you see a big stone head. It's made out of granite, I believe, and it's fitting for a couple reasons. One, we're filming in Canmore, Alberta, and I believe the name Canmore is Gaelic for big head. So the people who commission public art in this town took things very literally when they put that piece there. But also, like that big granite head, my head is a little bit heavy today. I want to take my motorcycle from Canmore, Alberta, where that big stone head is, all the way down to Argentina. It might take me about a year, and I've just got some concerns, and that's what I want to talk to you today about. One of the main things that's on my mind to begin with is money. I imagine that would concern most people.
Yeah, money concerns most people, doesn't it? You know, what does that was a year before you took off, walking the streets of Canmore with a heavy head. I liked the metaphor. I liked that. That was nice. What does a trip like this cost?
Well, it depends on how you do it. Like I mentioned, Ed March. I think he was working with a budget of $10 or $15 a day. We have had a bigger budget than that. I think for us, I planned to be gone for 1 year with about 30,000 Canadian dollars. So that's like about 15 or 20,000 American dollars. I was going to make a joke about
Canadian,
it is true. People, I tell this all the time. It is cheap. You know, living in the U.S. or Canada costs more than that for a year. So you can provided you manage it well. Hey, you know, I've got a bottle of wine here. I don't know if you guys have. I mean, it's 3:30 here in California. It's
late here. I'm drinking this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is Garzon. And unfortunately, you got stuck in Kelowna. You haven't really gotten out to Punta del Este and beyond to Jose Ignacio, which of course is this tony little hip town with expensive restaurants and stores. But just outside of it is the town of Garzon. And I'm gonna share with you, and I'm gonna open a bottle of wine and join you and drink it. Okay, you guys join me too. You already started. It's late there. And
yeah, it's late here.
In Garzon, which was a tiny, dumpy place on the windswept coast, Atlantic there, and a Argentinian guy, Francis Malman, I don't know how long ago, 15 years ago maybe, opened up a restaurant there, and he's probably Argentina's most famous chef. He has Siete Fuegos in the Valle de Uco near Mendoza. He's got 1864 in Mendoza, and I don't know, the list goes on of restaurants. But he opened this restaurant and now a winery. This is the winery, but it's named after the town. And, I was in Uruguay on my trip through South America in about this time of year, April. April might have been end of April. And sadly, that part of the country just closes up because we're moving into the winter there. For all of us up here, we're going into summer, of course. And I wanted so bad to go to this guy's restaurant. And of course, it had closed like 2 weeks before I got there. And it would be closed until, the next thing. So anyway, here's to Uruguay. This is a Tanat. And a Tanat is a grape varietal like Cabernet or Chardonnay. And it is the iconic, I think, the grape that is defined, that Uruguay is defined by, as much as Malbec is famous for in Argentina. So cheers to you guys. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers.
Today. Yeah, there we go. Nice. I want to show this. A lot of people always ask me, the biggest question when I say I rode my motorcycle around the world, they go, how did you cross the oceans? And since we've already talked a little bit about...
How's it going? This is Jeremy and Elle.
And,
hey, how's it going? This is Jeremy and Elle. We're riding our motorcycles. That's right, we're on the road. Where are we heading?
To South America.
That's right. So we're riding from Panama. This is the Bridge of the Americas, which takes us over the Panama Canal. And where are we heading?
We are heading to Colombia, but
right.
the road doesn't go there, so we're going to catch a boat. But
Big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yep, there's the road that takes us to Cardi, the port city, where we load onto the Stalrate.
That's our boat.
That's right. So we loaded the motorcycles onto this vessel and sailed for 3 days.
Watch some dolphins play in Galway.
Basically open water, nothing but smooth sailing, and here we are in Cartagena.
Landed safe and sound, bikes are uncovered, getting unloaded.
Letting the professionals do their thing. There's my KLR 650. What a beautiful, sexy motorcycle.
We get to watch it get unloaded twice.
Yeah, here they are, lifting it up and over. Pretty efficient system, really.
Were you nervous?
No, I was fine. KLR, you can't really wreck it. Can't make it any uglier either. Hoo-yah! There it is. On the ground. This is from the bike's perspective.
And here we go.
Are you nervous?
No, I was excited to be in Colombia.
And here we are in Colombia, and this is Elle West.
Yeah.
And here we are in Colombia.
Why did you choose that photo for?
So how was that journey?
On that boat. There was 18 bikes on that boat. I didn't know they could fit that many. They've certainly been experienced at loading and unloading and taking care of the bikes.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are, when I was in Panama City, I put my motorcycle on an airplane, and it was the only motorcycle on the airplane. And they had no sophisticated equipment like those winches and cranes. And when it finally got back to the port, into Bogota, where it was at the airport, the building was only set up for trucks with loading docks. So how do you take a motorcycle down? How many feet is that? 7 feet, 8 feet, or something?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, you could go out. They pushed my motorcycle through the office. They moved cubicles around, and then I finally rode it down these stairs out of there. But yeah, so Cartagena is beautiful, and it's so great to have video like that. In Colombia, you famously, I'm going to show another video because some of this is great stuff. By the way, let me see if I can do this. Let's see. Did we do the poll? Let's see. How many people own? Okay, so 54% of our reviewers own motorcycles. 27 don't. 13 say they'd like to, and I guess 4% have scooters. And nobody, it seems, or at least a fraction, would say I'd never get on a motorbike. So that's encouraging.
Well,
so I'm going to go ahead.
For that 13%, Elle is a motorcycle instructor. So
if they get to Canada,
if they get to Calgary, Canada, then look Elle up, and she'll sort you out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's the let's just take that. So for those people that say 13% of our audience say, well, they haven't ride them yet, what's the most basic message that you say to somebody new to motorcycles, Elle?
I would say this is pretty common, and almost any motorcyclist would agree. You're going to go where you look, so got to keep your eyes up. Anytime you're traveling, we always tell the new riders that, you're not allowed to look down at the ground. Keep your eyes up because you're going to go where you look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I used to be a motorcycle instructor, and what I would say is take whatever you've got for a budget for a motorcycle and take half of that and spend it on gear, like a proper helmet and proper jacket and proper pants. A lot of motorcycle riders don't think about that. Mm-hmm. So wear the gear, protect yourself.
And the one thing exactly what Elle was saying is, often, especially when you're new and inexperienced, you get target fixation. You're going around a corner and you're looking, you're thinking, am I going to run out of pavement on the shoulder? And you will go.
You think that it's too late. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if there's a rock in the middle of the road, don't look at the rock because you will hit the rock. Yeah. And there's, although I did see Elle riding off that ship without her helmet on. I did.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy.
True.
But all the gear, all the time kind of guy. That's for me, for sure. All
the gear most of the
time. Let's pull up this. So speaking of roads, and you wouldn't send a new novice motorcyclist on a road that's called, you'll see.
Elle, quick thoughts on the day?
It's a pretty wet and ugly looking day, Jeremy.
Yep. Why does that concern you?
Well, the mudslides we saw yesterday mean there are probably going to be more today, and today's a skinny, crappy road already.
What's the road called?
The Trampoline of Death.
Yeah. Are you nervous?
Well, I want to know how deathy this death road is. Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. The Trampoline of Death is a twisty bit of unpaved road between Mocoa and Pasto in Colombia. On a map, it looks like someone dumped out a can of spaghetti on the floor. It's often narrow and steep. Now, Elle is a competent rider, but she does not love dirt roads. She'll do them, but after a long day of dirt riding, this is her reaction to reaching pavement. Still, Elle is keen for adventure, and together we set out to ride this scenic mountain pass. As we climbed into the mist, the road got narrower and it began to rain. It sure was scenic though. And then we encountered our first real novelty of the day, a water crossing. Elle was kind enough to let me go first. And then it was Elle's turn. And then it was Elle's turn. Well, and then it was my turn again. The only problem with letting someone else ride your motorcycle across a creek is that it still leaves you on the wrong side of the creek. Anyway, as the ride continued its ascent, so too did Elle's confidence, and she rode every other water crossing on her own that day. Some crossings were easier than others, but even the shallow ones that flowed over pavement still had their own objective hazards. And speaking of waterfalls, there were plenty.
What are you doing, Jeremy? What are you doing?
So, Elle, how often does he just do these kinds of crazy things that, you're...
Often. I don't have any idea what goes on in his head sometimes. Yeah. Just keep the camera rolling. He's even said that to me. If he wipes out on the bike, I'm supposed to keep the camera rolling first and go help him pick up the bike second. And that's hard. I'm not trained to do that, but I'm learning. I'm getting there. That road was beautiful. Even just seeing it again now makes me want to go do it again, only with sunshine this time.
Oh, yeah.
I see some more people have joined us. So just once again, you're watching the Journeys webcast. My guests today are Jeremy Kroeker and Elle West, two Canadians who are south, locked up in Uruguay after leaving in August of 2019, their homes near Calgary, and traveling all the way down to the very bottom of South America, to Ushuaia, the furthest place you can go on this planet south on a road. And then they started making their way back home, and they're locked up in Uruguay. So I decided to join them with a glass of wine and to talk about stories. And I don't know that road from Pasto, but I was in Popoyan, and I went from Popoyan to Pasto, and I saw all those waterfalls. The road was mostly paved, if you could call it that. It was along that road before that the police checkpoint told me, from here to Pasto, don't stop. Don't get off your bike, ride straight through. Seeing all those waterfalls, I had to stop. And that's where I had an encounter with some guys with machine guns. We're going to talk about that another day. That's a tease. And this is not about my journey through there. This is about these guys and doing it now. And that road, God, I didn't know it. I didn't know that road. It looks beautiful, although it does look gnarly too.
Really quick though, Alan, what year was that you did that?
So that would have been in 2006. So it was a bad time to be in Colombia. Most people told me to fly the bike over Colombia and go to Ecuador and bought it. This was about a year after, I think, Glenn Hegstead.
So not the worst time to be in Colombia, but one of the worst times. And in Motorcycle Messengers 2, there's a story. A friend of mine, a lovely French woman, was in Bogota, and she was there in the midst of the worst of Colombia's troubles. And she was trying to deliver chocolate amidst gunshots and gun battles and things like that. So Colombia has come a long way. It's awesome. It's a great place to visit now. But 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, different story.
One of the things I will say on Colombia, and I know that, and I agree with you, actually, to my experience, despite that incident, which actually turned out okay. Trust me, I'm here talking to you. The people there seemed so eager to show you their country, to tell you why it's good, and they're really kind of bummed that the media has painted it out to be such the place that it had a reputation deserved, but it was coming out like in 2006. The people were the friendliest in most all of South America and Colombia. Absolutely. So I agree with that.
And the country's beautiful. Like, I don't think you could pick a bad road to choose to ride on around that country.
No, we didn't have a bad riding experience in the whole country. I mean, there were some weather problems, but that's going to happen in any country, right? Like we rode the Trampoline of Death, that road that you showed. It was in the middle of just a downpour the whole day. We have some other friends who did that road in beautiful sunshine, and I would like to go back, and we intended to go back, and then we got stuck. So here we are.
Hey, we're we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to show one more video, and then I want to open up the if you guys have got some questions for Elle or Jeremy, I would I'd put them into the chat column here, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But this to me is why I love the videos, and you obviously must have edited this one recently. So I'm going to play the opening of this, and then I'm going to fast forward to a segment if I've got it here. Yeah, watch this, guys. This is now in Peru. I'm sure a dream for most anybody is to see those steps, right? Jeremy, Machu Picchu.
The
step.
The step.
It's motorcycle therapy. We're going to Peru.
Just checking to see if you're listening, blah, blah, blah. Just checking to see if you're listening, nah, nah, nah. Just checking to see if you're listening, blah, blah, blah. Just checking to see if you're listening, nah, nah, nah.
Now, when I think about Peru, I think about these spiral aqueducts near
the aqueducts. I'm sorry.
Or this dog that broke into our tent and ruined everything. We had a lot of flat tires in Peru, and sometimes I just think about this bird. But when most people think about Peru, they think about this, Machu Picchu. This is not that story, however. This is just the story of how we got there from Cusco.
Today's a new day. We're leaving Cusco. We're going to Ollantaytambo.
What do I call it? That's right.
Yeah.
And are you nervous about today's ride?
A little. We're heading past Ollantaytambo if we can onto Santa Teresa, which is the back road into Machu Picchu. I've been told the road is crazy.
Crazy, you say? Trying to make friends with this llama. No, the road went crazy. Hello, llama.
Back road into Machu Picchu. I've been told the road is.
I'd like to talk about this at the back end here.
Started walking.
We go walking through a field, hand in hand.
Of course, when you're walking along train tracks,
No destination and no set plan.
you have to keep a sharp eye out for trains. Train coming. I think I got an idea
Need your
for a good
glasses?
shot.
Jeremy, hurry up. Jeremy, what are you doing?
No, this is gonna be fine.
Probably dancing to the road.
We'll get back up again.
Okay. Now, you've obviously worked in some movie production, or what's going on here, Al? Give us this one. I mean, we saw him taking a shower at a waterfall.
Yep. Jeremy's the cameraman. I just follow instructions. He's got some good ideas. When he was doing that lay down on the train tracks idea, I was like, this is not going to look good. This is going to look amateur and silly. And then once he pieced it together, I'm like, that looks awesome.
Elle does not follow instructions.
Generally,
No,
I just ask questions first, like why and how come and why not this way?
Yeah, but my video editing, I think, has improved in the past few weeks and months. I've got time now, so hopefully my YouTube videos will actually look a little bit better each time.
Yeah, no, they're really good. And I'm going to put up your YouTube in a second, but I got some questions. We'll go through as many of these as we can, but this one's for Elle. It says, what would you say to women who might be intimidated riding solo on a trip like this?
Well, it's hard not to be intimidated because people keep telling us we should be scared, right? You're going to do what on a motorcycle? Oh, you're going to do it alone. Oh, and you're a woman. Like all of those are reasons you should be more scared. But it is scary. For me, the first time traveling alone in a new country, it really was scary. I felt quite a lot of fear, but the only way to get through that is to do it. So whatever bite-sized chunks are reasonable for you. for somebody that might be just staying in your home country, but taking a overnight trip by yourself. And then, oh, hey, it's just a road that you drive on. It's not a big deal. You have a credit card, you can find a hotel, or if you have your own tent and you're camping, whatever it is, then a little bit longer next time, and maybe a little bit longer next time. And there's lots of groups out there. I didn't know this. The first time I traveled to Mexico on my motorcycle, I was on a little Honda Shadow. It was maybe 2004. I didn't know there was groups like Horizons Unlimited and Overland Expo and places where you could get all kinds of support and advice. People telling you exactly what border crossing to go to and what the border crossing looks like and what the procedures are. That's all available now on Facebook groups, on all kinds of forums. So feel free, send us messages, give you as much advice as I can.
So I wanted to make a note. Ronnie, who was my guest last time, I just see he put a comment in here. He stayed in the same hotel you guys were in Cusco. He just put
cool.
here, Ronnie's.
It's so great when people leave their stickers. Then you can know, hey, other motorcyclists were here. They must have a place to store the bikes, and it's a good place to stay.
Yeah, it was a bit expensive for our budget, but it worked out. It was good.
Good location.
And there's a woman I know. Actually, I haven't met her face to face, but we've communicated over the years. Adele is in Chile right now, or she's in where did you say she's in Pisac? She's got a Sauvignon Blanc, so she's in South America.
Nice.
As well. How many? Here's one. It says, "What is the? Let's think. Okay, how many times were you hit up for bribes, and did you pay and have any legal issues?" From Bob.
No, in fact, on this trip, I was surprised. We've only been hit up one time for a bribe by a police officer. And I talked it over with Elle briefly, and he gave us an ultimatum. He said, look, either we take you downtown and it costs a lot of money, or you can just pay me here. And I talked to Elle and I said, I think I'm going to go downtown and pay lots of money. And she said, great, I'm with you on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told the cop, okay, let's do this. Give me the ticket. Let's go downtown. And he went, I was just kidding. Just slow down. So one time we've been hit up for a bribe, and knowingly we have not paid a single one on this trip.
And my
I say knowingly because sometimes there's a few questionable moments where we're not sure if we're paying an official fee at a border, but usually we get receipts. And
sometimes the border fee says right on the window, there's a thing that says this should cost $9, but then she's telling you got to pay 10. Well, how come it says 9 when it is 10? But we ask everyone else around us and they all pay 10 too. So maybe it's a tourist tax. Maybe that's the actual cost. I don't know.
And that's right. I remember your story, Alan, about you asked for change for a bribe one time.
Yes, it's in
Motorcycle Messengers 2.
Yes, that story is in Motorcycle Messengers 2. Oh my God, it's funny. Get Motorcycle Messengers 2. There's lots of great stories there. I see I've got a friend of mine, a fellow used to live here right down the street from me, Jeff Sauls. Shout out to you. He says, Warrior, surprisingly good and inexpensive scotch in Ecuador. So he's joining us with a scotch.
Okay.
I wanted, and Rudy Maxa, who is a travel host extraordinaire. He's got a radio show, a TV show. He does a webcast as well. He says peak season is December to January in Garzon, which is still a sleepy town, but he says it's worth the expensive meal at Francis's place, because I'm sure it is. I never got to try it. How much mileage did the KLR have when your trip started, Jeremy, in Canada?
This one I actually bought brand new. It was a 2-year-old model that nobody bought out of the showroom. So I bought it brand new, but I did ride it for a year. So it probably had 9,000 kilometers, which is something like 6,000 miles or something like that. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But usually I buy used KLR 650s. Usually they've got about 6,000 miles on the odometer. And then I sell them after they reach... I'm not good with miles. I usually sell them when they reach about 60,000 kilometers. So I don't know what that is, 40,000 miles.
I don't know why we're still stuck in miles and inches and feet here. We've got a problem, let alone the quarantines going on. But anyway, we have, let's see, let's look for the next question here.
Can I say hi to Carla King while we're looking for our next question? Looks like she's on board. So thanks for setting us up.
Yeah.
And
Carla.
She's got a great story in Motorcycle Messengers 1 and 2.
Awesome. Yes. And we, Carla is in a podcast, a WorldRider podcast, which I can link in, and maybe we'll get her on. I know I want to get Jeff Sauls on here, who's expat in Ecuador. Great experiences. So and Rudy, man, we got so many great people tuning in today. Here's something
Jeff is Bones Engelman. We got to say hi to him too.
Mm-hmm.
Bones Engelman.
He's a biker. Yeah. In Ecuador. Yeah.
Oh,
hi to Bones.
He's in Ecuador?
Yeah.
Yep. We stayed at his house. He taught me a few guitar tricks.
Well, Bones, I need some guitar tricks too. You can see my axe over here, but it's yeah. What's the best food experience? Actually, you know what? I want to bring up something. Well, why don't you talk about? So the question is, what is your best food experience so far? Most surprising or weird? And then I have a photo that I'm gonna bring up here because I you know me, I'm the food explorer, they say, but
I'm a vegetarian, so I take less risks than Jeremy for sure. In fact, he's the one I give my food to if I can't eat it. So he's been more experimental than me. You want to talk about your cuy experience?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I did try cuy, which is basically guinea pig, and that was in Peru. And there's the chicken foot that you're showing.
That's really common in your bowl of soup.
Yeah. So I did eat cuy, guinea pig, and I'll do it probably never again.
Never again.
Maybe it wasn't prepared correctly, or maybe I just have too much empathy for these little animals. I am, thanks to Elle, eating less meat. Well, that's not entirely true. I feel worse about eating meat than I used to.
We're supposed to be off right now. If people want to stick around, I'll ask. Will you guys stick around for 2 more minutes? We can get to a couple.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, you're right. BMWs are still running at 60. Mine's got 130 and it's still running.
Yeah, that's a question from Ronnie.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you speak Spanish with a Canadian accent? Pete wants to know.
Of course.
My Spanish is perfectly clean.
That means he hardly has any.
It means I don't speak Spanish.
So we have Chris Kelly in from Hawaii, Q-Man from Michigan's is tuned in. Corey from Washington, D.C. It's great to have all of you guys with us. Tom, we did talk about the cost of this trip, but what was it again in Canadian, more or less?
It's about 30,000 Canadian dollars. So what is that? 22 American or something like that? I'm not sure.
That changes how much you want to do extra trips, like Antarctica. That was a big extra expense for us.
Huh.
And I think I met Chris Kelly, by the way, in Horizons Unlimited in California. That's where I also met you, Alan. And that's where I met Carla King too.
That's right. At Cambria was the first time you and I met. Was that the only episode? Look at me talking here. The only event they did in Cambria, which was a great location.
They did. I think they did it 2 years.
Did they do 2? Okay.
Yeah. And then that was it.
So Jeff Sauls apparently knows Bones as well. So who's in Ecuador. So that's great. And Adele did come in and say she's in the Sacred Valley of Peru through the duration. So we've got
which is a beautiful place to be.
Yeah,
in the Sacred Valley for Christmas.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, speaking of weird food, Rudy just put a note in. He's got it's because I was just thinking, and Rudy Maxa, you can see his name in there. Google that. I'll put a link somewhere in this. He's got Andrew Zimmern, who's the weird food guy, the U.S. guy, as a guest on his webcast, which he does on Thursdays, I think, right? Yeah, Thursdays. So anyway, that's it's called I Was Just Thinking. There's a link in the chat. So if you're into talking about weird food, that's a great one. And Rudy does a great webcast with some cool guests too. God, time flies when you're having fun. And there's so many, look at the crowd we had here to hang out with, old friends, new friends. This is what it's all about. And I'm sorry we can't be doing this together, guys. But it's nice that we all are here. So we'll close this down. So I know you guys it's way past your dinner time. You saw a great sunset before, and now it's time to continue that. This has been the Journeys I want to do one more thing so people can find. I think right.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's asking if we're going to get married after this. I don't know.
So I think this link, I you know what, this is new. I'm trying this for the first time, but I just put a link. This is where it says subscribe. I believe that is Jeremy's YouTube channel. If you like some of the videos that I showed today, they are on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, click that link. I think that'll take you right to his page. Then you can subscribe and see some of those cool videos. And then we'll and then I also, let's see, here we go. I've got one too. This is my love to have you guys subscribe to mine. I'm trying to get to that magic number of 1,000 subscribers, as I know Jeremy is. So let's go over to these pages and to YouTube and subscribe. Jeremy Kroeker, Elle West, I love you guys. I hope you can get on the road and come back through California again, and we can get with Carla and cook up some good food. And
I hope so too. Yes. Thanks for having us.
And next week, I'm hoping to go into Nepal with a guest from Christoph Knoll. I think you guys know him as well. I don't know if you do, but he's in quarantine.
This has been the Journeys Webcast inaugural episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. And the time will change depending on where we are in the world. Special thanks out to Ronnie and all for you for tuning in.
And Elle,
Tune to journeyswebcast.com for a complete schedule.
By the way, if you want to watch this again, you'll get a link for a replay sometime tomorrow. I'll also put it up on YouTube and send you that link as well. So last words of wisdom, my guys, my friends.
Take care. Sorry, there's bugs all over here. Take care. Stay safe.
Look forward to seeing everybody when we get back on the road again.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much. Till the next time, this is Alan Carl with Jeremy Kroeker, Elle West, Journeys, Adventure and Discovery in the time of Corona.
This has been another production of the Journeys Webcast by WorldRider Productions and your host here, Alan Carl. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. The time will change based on where we're going in the world. Thanks for tuning in.